APW family, welcome. We're going to get started in a minute. Union greetings, APW family. Thanks so much for joining Legislative Political Director Judy Beard and myself, President Mark Dimonstein, for a discussion tonight on the national presidential elections and its significance for the American Postal Workers Union and postal workers. So welcome to one and all, APW family. Before we get started, I just want to ask my assistant, Steve DiMatteo, to read the Code of Conduct, and then we'll get right into business. We're going to keep this evening, or this late afternoon for some of you, to 1 hour. So, Stephen, if you're there, can you please share the Code of Conduct?
I am here, and good evening, everyone. The APWU is committed to providing an environment free from discrimination and harassment. We ask all meeting participants to embrace our values of equity and equality and conduct themselves in this meeting consistent with those values. There is a designee as the first point of contact for anyone who thinks they may have experienced discriminatory, harassing, or otherwise unacceptable behavior. We urge you to contact the designee if you have any concerns. Please note that the Code of Conduct applies to all meetings of the American Postal Workers Union, including meetings or calls held via Zoom or other software, and includes both discussion and chat. The designee for this evening's meeting is our Director of Communications, Madeline Griffith. You can reach Madeline at 202-431-5781. Back to you, President Dimonstein.
Thank you so much, Stephen. Listen, we appreciate all of you taking some time out of your busy schedules to join us tonight. And we appreciate many of the questions that you've submitted in advance. And during the course of this 1 hour live stream, feel free to send in through the chat any other questions you may have. We certainly may not get to all of them in the hour, but we're going to get to as many as we can. So listen, we have two main battles going on. You're aware of both of them. We're in the middle of contract negotiations for a new contract affecting 200,000 postal workers and our families and our communities. And we have a presidential election and all the down ballot races that are very significant for postal workers. We're not going to be discussing negotiations tonight. We're going to keep you posted through our various channels and our toll-free number and so on. But the question of the presidential election and our negotiations are not disconnected, because as we're going to discuss tonight, we have one candidate for president that doesn't even believe we should have the right to negotiate over wages and benefits. But we're going to get into this. Look, we have a critical presidential election about 3 weeks from now. And that's what we're going to focus on tonight. And our goal tonight is pretty simple. We want to have an honest conversation with all of you and be able to answer a lot of your questions about what's at stake for postal workers and all workers in this election. And we want to encourage maximum participation and action between now and Election Day. But let me start by being very clear, and I speak for the entire APW leadership. We're not trying to dictate how you vote, how individuals vote, what moves you to vote. You vote your conscience. Your vote is your vote. We respect the fact and consider it a strength that we represent postal workers throughout the entire political spectrum, from left to right and everything in between. But your leaders are elected by you to lead. And leading means, whether in the legislative arena, negotiations, or elections, we approach the issues on what we think is best for postal workers and for all workers, for our union and for the public postal service, and therefore for the people of the country. And when we apply those tests to this election, we believe that there's a stark choice for postal workers. Our endorsements are not freely given. I agree with Sean Fain, of the president of the UAW, and there's an outside chance he'll be able to join us tonight. We hope he can. He's very busy and was tied in with some matters. But he was very clear that endorsements are not freely given. They have to be earned. And in our 2016 APW National Convention, for example, we voted up a policy that our union believes in an independent approach to politics, that we're not in the pocket of any political party. And that we also recognized as a union that there are problems with both of these political parties when it comes to advancing the core issues of the working class. But in that same resolution, we advocated that we have to pay a lot of serious attention to electing candidates, representatives who are pro-worker, pro-union, pro-postal service. And up and down the line, from president to our city council. And for us, an endorsement is not whether a candidate has an R, a D, or an I, or another initial after their name. In fact, it's very important to know and to realize we had some questions on this that came in, that the APW supports politicians who support us regardless of party affiliation. Our endorsement should be based and are based on weighing the issues: workers' rights, union rights, job security, decency, workers' unity, respect for all people. And so, as many of you know, the National Executive Board has unanimously voted to endorse Kamala Harris for president, and of course now the Harris-Walz ticket. And some have asked, and it appeared in some of the questions, what was the endorsement process and why did we do it? So I'm going to talk briefly about the endorsement process and then give a warm welcome to your legislative political director, Judy Beard. So the national convention, our national convention in 2024 met in mid-July. It's the highest authority of the APW, and 2,000 delegates are democratically elected by you, the members, the local members, to come to the convention. We deliberated, we make decisions, including the decision on who to endorse in this presidential election. At that time, Joe Biden was the Democratic nominee, and the convention, we had a lively debate, but the convention overwhelmingly voted to endorse Joe Biden at that time for re-election. However, within a few days, as all of you know, President Biden withdrew from the race and endorsed Kamala Harris. And in the spirit of the convention resolution and the guidance of the delegates that they gave to the leadership, the APW National Executive Board endorsed Kamala Harris for president, as did, by the way, the AFLCIO Executive Council, of which I, representing you, are proud to sit on. So that was the process. And I want to welcome Legislative Director Judy Beard, doing a terrific job in our legislative and political arena, to share with you a little bit about the why. I just shared a little bit of the process, but why did the convention speak so loudly and clearly? And why did the executive board follow that lead and endorse Kamala Harris over Donald Trump? So Judy Beard, welcome. I know a lot of the people on this call know you and know your work, but I'm sure they're glad to see you here, as we're glad to see them. Judy, take it away.
Thank you, President Dimonstein. I'm excited to be here tonight. The positive attributes of Harris-Walz campaign: they support protecting reproductive rights. They support expanding voting rights. They support protecting and expanding Medicare and Social Security. They support strengthening our economy, making the rich pay for their fair share, by the way, expanding the child tax credit, increasing the small business tax credit, giving first-timers who are homeowners for the first time $25,000 down payment assistance, supports reducing gun violence. Why does it matter? It matters a lot for us as APWU members, why the executive board supported this candidate.
Thank you, Judy. And if I can add to that, and maybe you want to jump in when I add it too. One of the questions we had in advance was, what's our problem with Donald Trump? And so, along with the positive side that Sister Judy Beard just shared, let's talk a little bit about Donald Trump. Not to dwell on the negative, but you all have a right to know what our thinking was and how we addressed the issues. When Donald Trump was president, he openly advocated in writing through the Office of Management and Budget, which is the White House, the privatization of the post office, selling it off to private corporations for private profit. Folks, that's our jobs. That's our defense of the public common good, known as the Public Postal Service. The president at the time, Donald Trump, also established a task force to deal with postal issues. And one of the recommendations of that task force was that we no longer should have the right to negotiate over wages and benefits. Donald Trump openly withheld COVID relief initially. And he did it in such a way to say, we're not going to give the post office the money they need because we don't want people to have a successful election mail, vote by mail season. He demanded publicly that the post office raise package rates 4 to 5 times. Imagine what that would do to the ability of the Postal Service to capture the growing package market. And in that process, he called all of us a joke. He was recently on a public meeting with Elon Musk, the billionaire, and that's who Trump's about, the billionaires, applauding Musk for firing strikers. Where does that leave the working class? The National Labor Relations Board appointments were as pro-corporate and pro-company as you can possibly get. And Judy already addressed really the question of tax breaks. So division is the boss's game. And we don't want to endorse somebody for president who wants us to hate each other and fight each other as working people rather than unite for a better life. So that's some of the comparison between the Harris Walz ticket and the Trump Vance ticket. And Judy, I believe too, if you can help me out here a little bit, I believe that as Senator, Kamala Harris fully supported the Postal Service Reform Act and other pro-postal paths. Am I right about that?
You're absolutely right. And this current administration supports unions.
Right. And we are union and proud to be union, APW family. We had a number of questions that came in advance. Oh, by the way, along throughout this live stream, we're going to be posting how you can get more involved, how you can volunteer. The type is small for me to read, but at apw.org/volunteer, it's right on your screen. You can go on. You'll be connected to Sister Beard's staff and the legislative department about how you could help. You'll be connected to some of the AFLCIO paths to do phone banking or door knocking or mailing and other things. And there's also, you can text volunteer, all capitals, VOLUNTEER, to 91990 to get more involved. And we'll repeat those points of contact throughout the live stream. Stephen, let's get to some of the questions that were sent to us in advance. And I know we gathered some of them because there were many questions that were people asked in similar questions they asked in multiple ways. So I'll turn it back to you. And if you can share some of the questions, Sister Beard and I will share our answers.
Be happy to. Thanks very much. The first question comes from Stephen Seppin. He's in California. Stephen asks, why does it matter to USPS who the politicians are? Shouldn't we just concentrate on doing our jobs with honesty and integrity? Wouldn't that be a novel approach?
Sister Beard, you want to
Yes, I
take a crack at that one?
It's important that postal workers get involved in politics. Congress can put us back on the pathway to being privatized. To be privatized may mean no union, no benefits, lower wages. Congress can help fund us in times of a crisis. Remember during the crisis when we got COVID funds? Because Congress passed it in the House, passed it in the Senate, and the president signed it into law. So we need to be concerned about who is the president of the United States and who are members of Congress. In addition to that, Congress passed an Inflation Reduction Act, which gave the USPS $3 billion to fund electric vehicle fleet. Now, the old fleet was not getting anywhere. It was breaking down and it was costing more money, and it was small. And so the packages today are coming through, they're large packages. So we needed a new fleet. Congress passed the PAEA in 2006, the Postal Accountability and Enhancement Act. And what that did is just ran the post office into debt, billions of dollars into debt. Congress last 2 years ago eliminated the Postal Accountability and Enhancement Act so that the Postal Service didn't have to pay that back debt. So it's very, very important that we all get involved in politics.
Thank you, Judy. And also, Congress decides when the president nominates, Congress decides whether to confirm nominations to the Board of Governors and the Postal Regulatory Commission, both of which can have a huge impact on the public postal service and our jobs. Stephen, was there another question or two or three?
There sure were. The next one comes from Kim Guy in South Carolina. Sister Kim had a few questions, but she was mainly focused on Project 2025. Can you explain what Project 2025 is, and is our democracy actually in jeopardy with another Trump presidency?
Well, those are very good and interesting questions. I'll take the first crack, and then I'm sure Sister Beer will jump in. So Project 2025 is a product of the Right-Wing Heritage Foundation. And it's been defined and called a blueprint for a second Donald Trump administration. It has the people that worked on this, there were about 140 former staffers from the 2016-2020 Trump White House that has worked on this Project 2025 proposals. And they're pretty much laying out what's on the ballot for us. The names are going to be Trump and Harris, but Project 2025 and what it stands for is truly on this ballot and part of what we're voting for. And so I really do appreciate the question. In terms of unions, Project 2025 is advocating the banning of unions for public sector workers. The last I checked, we're public sector workers. Banning it, make it harder for workers to unionize, such as banning the right of a company to voluntarily negotiate a union when there's majority interest. They're talking about allowing minors back into dangerous workplaces and lowering. I mean, we spent generations fighting against child labor, and they want to bring it back all for the profits of the corporations. They want to reduce workplace health and safety provisions and OSHA authority. They want to do away not do away, but they want to move millions and millions of more workers to what they call the independent contractor status, which is a ruse, a cover for companies to not have to pay workers' benefit as somehow we're our own independent business people. Interesting, I think, to our members, very interesting to our members, is attack on veterans' rights, Project 2025. We're one of the largest employers, and proud of it. The post office is one of the largest employers of veterans in the country. Actually, I think the largest outside of the Department of Defense. They are advocating that they save money off the backs of veterans by having fewer health conditions that would qualify for veteran disability benefits. And of course, they want to cut the federal workforce in half under Project 2025, and 30% of federal workers are our veterans. There's a tax on children and Head Start programs and school meals and the like. So Project 2025 is right in our face. You could go to the September-October issue of the APW Postal Worker Magazine. On page 7, we give some summaries of it, and you can also go onto the AFLCIO website that has a lot of details on 2025. And Judy, did you have anything specifically on 2025? Because I'll go on. No? Yeah, go ahead.
I just encourage people to download Project 2025 and read it. I know it's over 900 pages, but you can read the subjects that you're interested in. And why would you, or maybe you would, want to put someone in office if you disagree with the plan they plan to do when they get in?
Thanks, Judy. And I think the second part of the question, Stephen, is democracy really at stake with a Trump presidency? Was it something like that?
That's right.
Well, I think the honest answer is yes. Candidate Trump, former president candidate Trump, lays it right out. He says, I'm going to be a dictator on day one. He is now openly advocating, and you could all hear it on the news right from him, retaliation against political enemies from within. Now, he was perfectly satisfied with political enemies who stormed the Capitol, killed and brutalized Capitol police officers, and would have hung elected officials had they gotten their hands on them on both the Democratic and Republican side. So the enemy within is an interesting concept. What he means by the enemy within is somebody that disagrees with him. So he's actually saying that he's thinking about, if he gets elected, unleashing the military against those forces that don't agree with him. In terms of the federal sector, he's open about his plans to do away with the more neutral civil service system. And he only wants people in the federal government that's loyal to him. The question of voting rights. We believe, and I'm sure everybody in this call believes, in access to the ballot box, our cherished right to vote on a nonpartisan basis. We move the mail and election mail, and we do it proudly. You did a wonderful job in 2020. 65 million people voted by mail in the middle of a pandemic with no fraud. Okay, despite what everybody says, that's the truth. No fraud. The audit showed no fraud. The court cases showed no fraud. They've never produced any evidence except the big lie. But when you talk about suppressing people's rights to vote, that's an attack on our democratic rights. So you're talking to a person, and I know I'm not alone, who believes that there's a true danger of this country becoming more like Nazi Germany with a Trump presidency than the kind of country that we want to live in. So we do believe some of what's at stake in this election is defense of democratic rights. And rather than restriction of those rights, we want to work towards expanding those rights, voting rights, and so on. So we're in a difficult time. And I know in the news, people say, well, Trump's just joking. And come on, folks. He wasn't joking in his first term. He's not joking about what he plans to do. He's laying it all out. And you want the military used against those who don't agree with you? Or the National Guard used against those who don't agree with you? So I think we really have to wake up as working people, because democratic rights, as difficult as they are, as limited as they are fundamental to working people. And let's not forget about our democratic right, as difficult as the corporations make it to have a union, to do what we're doing in negotiations now, to sit down with the company and management and force them to sit down with us and negotiate over our wages, our benefits, our health and safety, and our rights on the job. Thanks, Kim, for those questions.
The next question for you, President Dimonstein and Director Beard, comes from Patty Homan. She's in Texas. Patty wants to know, how come the APW always supports the Democratic candidates? She says, I've been around a lot of years and have never seen the support go to the Republican candidates. I see it as a lost opportunity for the members because if the APWU talked to both parties, we could get better support. I believe there are a lot of members who would support Republicans too.
Judy,
I
you
would
want
like
to start with that one?
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
take it
I
away.
will. APWU does support Democrats and Republicans. As legislative and political director, I've invited Republicans and Democrats to speak on panels with me at the President's Conference, APWU President's Conference, more than once. And they came and they did an excellent job. We've invited Democrats and Republicans and independents to our national convention to address us. And some examples of the work that they did, and we do support them. The Social Security Fairness Act. We asked our members to call your members of Congress in the House because we want this bill on the floor, because it's unfair to postal employees under the civil service retirement system who went out and got a second job, paid into Social Security, and the government just cut their money like 50%, 75%, and it's wrong. But we are smart enough to know that a bill cannot pass into law without Republican support. In the United States Senate, it takes 60 votes, this 118th Congress. It takes 60 votes. There's only 50 Democrats, so you need Republicans. In the House, yeah, there's more Republicans right now than Democrats. However, we can't depend on a Democrat either. We don't automatically say, oh, we got all the Democrats. We depend on how they show their action and support toward the bills and issues that we're interested in. We support the Republican who co-sponsored the Social Security Fairness Act, which is Grage from Louisiana, and he co-sponsored it with Susan. He co-sponsored it in the Senate with the Democrat, Spanberger from Virginia. We also support the two people in the Senate, which is Susan Collins and Senator Brown. And we encourage our members of Congress to work together on legislation. Don't just introduce a bill that you know is not going to go anywhere. They have to talk to both sides and make sure they get as much support as they can, regardless of party. There's a second bill that most of our members have called me about, which was the Federal Retirement Fairness Act. Our current workforce would like to be able to get paid for being a PSE. When they get converted to regular, they want that time that they spent as a PSE to be able to be used to retire early. They want to get credit for that time. But they didn't pay for that time, so they would have to pay back the time. And, we're pushing this bill. Once again, we're pushing it by Republicans and Democrats. It was co-sponsored by both, original co-sponsored by two people, one from each of the top parties. And we're fighting together to try to get that done. There are other bills, the Shipping Equity Act. We think the Postal Service should be able to ship alcoholic beverages. FedEx does, UPS does. Why not the Postal Service? They would bring in money. And we have a bill that's also co-sponsored, originally introduced by a Republican and a Democrat. So up and down the board, we are strong supporters of members of Congress that support our issues. And we don't support all Democrats because all Democrats don't support our issues.
Thanks, Judy. You said it all. Stephen, is there any more question before we go onto a guest that has joined us tonight?
Well, this next question might be exactly what you're thinking of, President Dimonstein. It comes from Brandy Mariah in Oregon. Brandy asks, how do we discuss the importance and urgency of voting for Harris as shop stewards and union activists without violating the Hatch Act?
Good question. And on that one, we did ask our lead counsel, Mindy Holmes, to be available to answer any of the Hatch Act concerns. And I think Mindy's ready to join us. There you are. Let me introduce Mindy Holmes to all our good members who have joined us tonight. Mindy, you heard the question, and there was actually a second question that I think dealt with the Hatch Act as well. So we appreciate any insights you can bring to this discussion.
Sure. Thank you, President Dimonstein. And thank you, Brandy, for the question. It's really a credit to you. And I know a number of you worry about this, about complying with the Hatch Act. And that's why the American public trusts you with handling their ballots and handling their election mail during this presidential election season. So look, here's the thing. The Hatch Act, it does not stop you from being an active supporter of your candidate. You can wear your freedom t-shirt. You can talk to people about voting for Harris. You can knock on doors for the Harris campaign. You can give money to the campaign. You just cannot do it at work. If you are on postal property, whether you're on a break, whether you're on the clock, you need to be nonpartisan at work. No t-shirts, no hats, no campaigning on the workroom floor, no posting on social media while you're at work, no forwarding things that you see on social media while you're at work. The idea is that the postal workplace, like all federal government agencies, is a nonpartisan, neutral place. And it's important that we keep that and we uphold that. That's, again, like I said, that's the trust that the American public has in us. So you're providing them the important service of handling their mail, and you're not doing it in a partisan way. There are nonpartisan things that you can do at work, but since the question was about campaigning, and I know maybe that is a little bit of a limit. If you're thinking, well, I'm a shop steward and work is where I get to see people and I want to talk to them and try to influence them on how they vote, that's fair, but you have to find a way to do it away from postal property, off postal property, on your own time. Like this town hall, I know that there are some questions about, well, why are we allowed to do this? The union is not a federal employer. It is not hatched. You're not hatched when you're here. You're on your time. And that's why we can talk about these partisan things openly in this meeting. I'm sure there are a lot of specific questions that you have. If there are specific questions, I urge you to go to the APWU website. Under the Legislative and Political Department, there's a Hatch Act button that has there's an election time, frequently asked questions, and other guidance. You can go on light blue. The Postal Service has information, lots of information about the Hatch Act. You can also go to the Office of Special Counsel. It is a particular small federal agency, and one of their jobs is to enforce the Hatch Act. And they have a lot of guidance on there as well. So if you have questions, seek out the answers. But just remember, it's not a reason not to be involved this election season, whoever your candidate is. Just keep it out of the workplace.
I appreciate that, Minnie. I know a lot of people ask about the social media aspect because we're in this new world. And there again, I think what Councilor Holmes has shared, you can do that, just not in the workplace.
That's right.
And that's where you get firm. But let's not use the Hatch Act as a fear factor to not do what we need to do to protect our jobs, to protect our union, and to protect the public Postal Service. Thanks so much, Mindy.
My pleasure.
Judy, my understanding is that you have a guest joining us tonight that's out in the field doing some of this good work. Do you want to introduce her?
Oh, Thank you. I would love to introduce her. I would like everyone to welcome Brittany Price from Cleveland Area Local in Ohio. She is the Research and Education Director, but what she's doing right now is in the streets, educating people about the importance of voting. Sister, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Yeah, have the pleasure along with my union sister Bindu Senko out of Cleveland. We are on the election release staff, and we have been having fun going out door to door canvassing, as well as doing postcards and phone baking, talking to people to get out to vote, encouraging members from all labor unions to first, register to vote, but now get out to vote. Do you know where your balloting offices is? Have you received your absentee ballot? Are you voting by mail? Do you know when you're going to plan to vote? Are you going to go early? Are you going to go on voting day? Having those conversations with those labor union brothers and sisters.
And just if I can ask you a question,
Yes.
Brittany, do you talk to the people you're knocking on doors with? And I understand from what you said, you're talking to other union members, not just APW members, but union members.
Correct.
Do you also talk about the issues? And also, if you could share with the folks on, how has it gone? Do people seem to appreciate the door knock? Do they appreciate the conversation? What kind of reactions are you getting out there?
Yeah, it's normal to be a little apprehensive because you never know what you're getting into. That's normal. But it's been perceived great. At the end of the day, we have a job to do, and people generally respect it. We use the app and we see who are Democrats or who are Republicans or who have no affiliations. But the job is to talk to everybody. We want to share we have two people that we are endorsing in Ohio. We have our Senator Sherrod Brown, as well as Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, of course. And we're talking with them and saying, these are the issues that support us as labor workers. And are you planning to vote? Are these the people that you want to vote for? We're sharing our personal stories with them and why they should vote for these people. And generally just having those conversations and seeing, what's their consensus and how they feel about it. So it's been great.
And when you knock on the door, it sounds like you're always with somebody else. You're not doing it alone, right?
Yes, we're never alone. You're always either paired up. There's a group. Like I said, I'm with my union sister, Bindu Senko. But however, there's so many other unions that we work with as well. You're never alone. It's always safe. They make sure that you have somebody working with you.
Great. And this is a good, go ahead, Judy.
Brittany,
Sorry.
And is this the first time you've done this?
So it's not. This is the second time I've done this. And it's just such a pleasure. It's so fun. My president, Nigel Salim, actually, when he first asked me what I was interested, I said, yeah, I wasn't sure about it. I didn't really know what it all entailed. But I've always said that the union is more than just the contract and grievances, right? So we have to get involved in other ways. And I'm glad that I was able to, because I've educated myself on how important politics is for our livelihoods and our unions to, go forward. So now with the education of myself, I'm able to educate my peers as well and tell them how important it is to get out and volunteer.
Great. And this is a good, Judy, I was just going to raise this good people about how they could volunteer and become another Brittany throughout the country. We have a lot of folks like Brittany out on our Labor 2024 release time. So you can go to apw.org/volunteer, or you can text volunteer, all caps, to 91990. So we appreciate. Thanks so much, Brittany, for not just sharing, but for all that day-to-day work you're doing. And we multiply that by hundreds and thousands of people around the country. And that's going to help yield the kind of result that will help uplift us. Stephen, we may have time for another question or two. It doesn't look like Brother Sean Fain is going to be able to join us tonight. He very much wanted to. He's on the front lines, which is why we asked him. He's in the battleground state of Michigan. He's the UAW president that's got his feet to the ground, his ear to the ground. He knows what's going on, and he was going to share some of what they're doing and why they have chosen to support Kamala Harris and Tim Walsh with the strength and the fortitude and the passion that they have. But we have time for a few more questions. If you have some more, Stephen. I don't know
Sure,
if any came in while we were chatting.
We've gotten a few. We've gotten a few from the chat, indeed. Also saw our Director of Industrial Relations, Charlie Cash, said his department can help with Hatch Act questions as well. That was in the comments. This
Good.
question came from Ed Maurer on Facebook. It's a little bit about what we just heard from Brittany, but Ed wants to know what happened to the program Judy Beard was asking for volunteers with the AFL-CIO for election help, and also the program monitoring vote by mail for the election.
Judy, that sounds like a perfect question for you. Thanks, Ed, for joining us and weighing in.
The AFL, and thank you for the question. The AFL-CIO election help is exactly what Brittany is doing. So we are running that program right now. We've been running it for a couple months, and we run it with the Central Labor Councils and state fairs across the country. So some of them are not asking for additional volunteers, but in all of the battleground states, they want more and more and more volunteers. So we use the AFL-CIO as a guide to, where you want workers. We work together as a team, and we do have volunteers. And if you are interested in finding out if they need more volunteers, somewhere they need volunteers, I'm sure. Go to apwu.org.
Judy.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, Judy. I was going to add also that just because you're in a state that may not be a battleground state doesn't mean that there's not work to do. So, for example, let's say somebody's in Massachusetts. The chances are that Massachusetts is not a state that is a problematic state for Kamala Harris and Tim Walsh. So somebody in a state like that may say, well, there's nothing for me to do. But unfortunately, in our democracy, we have an electoral college. So you can win the popular vote by 7, 8, 9, 10 million people, and you can still lose. So somebody from Massachusetts or somebody from California shouldn't throw up their hands and say, well, there's nothing to really do. We're okay here. We're not okay as a country. And somebody from California, I'm not picking on those states, I'm just giving examples, can be plugged into the phone banking in Pennsylvania, or plugged into the phone banking in Michigan or Wisconsin or North Carolina or Georgia or Arizona or Nevada. That's where, in this distorted method we use of the electoral college, that's where the election's going to be decided. It doesn't mean your own elections in your own state aren't important. You may be working on city council races, House and Senate races at the state level, key Senate races, key House races on the federal side. All of that's very important, and we want you to be involved in all of it. In terms of the presidential race, you can phone bank from any state through the AFL-CIO program and get into those battleground states and make a difference. And Judy, there was another part of the question about the election mail issue. I don't know if you want to touch on that or not.
Yes, in our contract, in our collective bargaining agreement, we have language for an election task force. And I serve on that national committee with other unions and management. And we've had great success over the years. In 2020 was the first year, and they did a great job. You did a great job. Postal workers did a great job getting the ballots out in a timely manner that came through the post office. And we have that set up today. We do have a few bumps that we're going to work out next week. And we have postal employees that are election monitors in some areas working now, making sure that the ballots get processed in a timely manner.
Thank you, Judy. And if there's any people out there working as monitors and have any concerns, contact Sister Judy Beard in the Legislative Department in a direct way, and we'll get right on it. Stephen, any more questions before we close it out?
We got a really interesting one from Tyler. Tyler's watching on YouTube, and it's similar to some of the other questions. He wants to know about how the presidency affects our work. Specifically, Tyler asks, can you go over the NLRB strength under a Harris administration versus a Trump administration?
Very, very good question. Look, the NLRB, the National Labor Relations Board, has a lot of impact on workers' rights, particularly when it comes to winning unions, voting for unions, keeping unions, and the like. And also, at times when it's working well, it can help hold management's feet to the fire in enforcing certain rights, such as, let's say, the right to information for the union representatives to be able to investigate and file grievances. So the best example we can give is what happened with Trump and then Biden on this issue. Donald Trump appointed, Judy, you got to help me with his name. I think it was, or Stephen can, it was one of the most pro-corporate, anti-union general counsels that the NLRB has had in decades and decades and decades. It may have been Scalia's son, but I may be mixing that up with somebody else. But so everything they were doing was skewed towards the corporations. Biden came in and made a change because the general counsel of the NLRB is appointed by the president, and the members of the NLRB are nominated by the president. So Jennifer Abruzzo, who did come out of the union movement as a lawyer, is now the general counsel of the NLRB. And the NLRB, within their limits of the law, they've been much more true to the intent of the law. The NLRB, the NLRA, the National Labor Relations Act, was established really as a pro-worker type of act, and it's been turned often into something else. So Jennifer Abruzzo has helped put the NLRB on a path that's more fair to workers. I would assume, I haven't talked to Kamala Harris about this, but I would assume if Kamala Harris is president, she will very much want to keep somebody like, and probably she herself, Jennifer Abruzzo, as the counsel of the NLRB. Very important for us. And if Donald Trump gets back in, I may have had the name wrong of who he had in there, but it's going to be somebody like that, whether it's, who represents the Elon Musks of the world. Those people of the world that think if workers legally engage in a strike to withhold their labor, to improve their lives and their working conditions, that somehow it's okay to then fire those people. So that's part of the stark choice. And the NLRB does have a big impact on our ability to represent you as union reps and our ability to grow the labor movement. And folks, we're not an island unto ourselves. The labor movement's down to 6%, 6.5% of the private sector workers, 11% overall. That impacts us all at the bargaining table because we're not as strong as a union movement to win the kind of things that we deserve. So growing the labor movement, just because we have a union doesn't mean we don't have a stake in growing the labor movement, and we have a huge stake in growing the labor movement within our industry, i.e. organizing, in particular, Amazon. That will help uplift us all. So the NLRB is a big question there. Whoever the president is has a huge role to play. And whether they're really a functionary of the billionaire class or they're more of what the intent of the law was to help uplift the working class. Stephen,
right.
any other question, and then we'll wrap it up.
We'll wrap up with one more. That was Peter Robb, who was Trump's general counsel, and he knows something about firing striking workers. He worked on in the Reagan administration on the Patco union busting. So that's what you can expect.
Yeah, when I raised Scalia, I think that Trump put him to the Department of Labor. So I was mixing the two up, but they're two peas in a pod.
That's right. And so the final question brings us a little bit back closer to the postal world. And it's like Tyler's question, but it's a question that says the Postal Service is supposedly an independent agency of the federal government. So why does the presidency matter for postal workers?
Well, again, I think Judy did address many of those questions. They appoint the Board of Governors, they appoint the PRC. The administration has, for instance, the OMB report, Office of Management Budget report that I shared from June 2018. That's the president's report. And that report was advocating that we kill the post office as a public institution. That would kill our jobs, kill our job security, and kill our union. So there's just so many ways that the president and their administration can either help or hurt postal workers. So we actually very much think in this election that the Postal Service itself is on the line. The public postal service itself is going to be on the ballot. Trump said exactly what he wants to do to the postal worker and to us and to unions. Judy, you want to add anything to that one?
No, I think we both covered that issue. It's just important that postal workers vote, get involved in politics, study the facts about the issues. And we're really happy for these questions because it answers a lot of questions in your mind as to what you need to do. And you need to get out and vote. And you need to not just vote yourself. You need to make sure your family members vote, your community members vote, your coworkers vote, and get involved in our Labor 2024 program and make those calls into your state or another state. But we need to do every single thing that we can do to make sure that the people that get elected are going to help the working class in America.
That was a great conclusion, Judy. So let me just close out with two things. One, I want to, again, share our appreciation for all of you who joined us tonight, spent your own time to help discuss, think about, raise some of the questions, these important issues. We're in a race to the finish. This is going to be a close election. And I will simply conclude, and look, you make the APW go round on every front, the members in the field, the activists in the field, and this is another arena where we're calling on all of you. Whatever your personal political persuasion is, I've been talking a lot about Liz Cheney. Not my favorite politician over the years by any means, but she's telling the truth about how dangerous. As a Republican, as a lead, she was part of the House leadership of the Republican Party and has openly said that Donald Trump should never be allowed near the White House again because she cares about the Constitution, she cares about democratic rights, and she's out there. We all need to be out there with her and everybody else who shares these same concerns. And so keep up all the great work out there. Let's not leave any stone unturned. And I'll end with a quote from me that we had in our Postal Worker magazine, September, October, when we announced the executive board endorsement of Kamala Harris for president. And this is what I said. The outcome of this presidential election will have a huge impact on postal workers, and the choice in this election is stark. Either we elect Donald Trump, who plans to destroy the public postal service, our jobs and union, further undermine workers' rights, women's rights, and voting rights, and send us on a path to dictatorship. Or we elect Kamala Harris, who has proven as vice president and in prior political office to support postal issues and has provided some genuine advocacy for workers' rights, women's rights, unions, respect for all people, and common decency. APW family, let's do what we always do. Let's go out there and get it done. Let's unite on the issues that affect our jobs, our families, our public postal service, our communities, and our country. Thanks all for taking the time tonight. Thank you so much, Sister Beard, our legislative political director, Mindy Holmes, our general counsel, and Brittany Price from the field in Cleveland. Keep up all the great work, everybody. Thanks again. Solidarity forever.